boy, here's your very special edition to Rational Mail. It's a Wednesday live stream. I haven't done one of these in a while. I have with me Troy Francis today. We're going to analyze this situation. What the hell is an AMOG anyways? Anybody know what an AMOG is? I do. Old school. All right. Nice. Okay, let's pull that out. There, I have Mr. Troy Francis, who is on mute until I change the audio settings. Yeah, that's for you. That's your chair. All right, now you're unmuted.
Good stuff. What an intro, man.
Yeah, you like that? Yeah. That's my new Brittany Renner intro. Like, what the hell is this? What did he? I love putting like little clips in front of my intros. That was too easy. That was a gimme.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. A lot of energy in that music, though, definitely.
Yeah, I haven't had you on in a very long time. I'm trying to remember the last time I had you on. I think it was an interview, wasn't it? When did I have you on last?
I came on with Tusk. It was sort of earlier in the well, it was in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
It was just before we went off to Russia, actually. So
right.
Yeah. So it's a little while back now.
Yeah, the thumbnail that wasn't.
yeah, exactly.
I thought that was funny. I remember that, and now I remember because I did that thumbnail. It's actually staring me in the face every time I'm creating new ones. I remember I put that up there, and I think I pulled that bikini shot from James's Instagram, and I'm like, what could possibly go wrong? There's like way worse than that on no, they canned me on that. That was crazy. So how you doing? What do you have going on? Like before we get started, I have ulterior motives. We're going to get into the Jeff Bezos situation here today. I've got the video. Are you familiar with the Jeff Bezos situation?
Absolutely. Yes, I absolutely am. I've watched the clip several times. I've watched some other people's analysis on it and stuff like that. I mean, we'll get into it, but it's a really interesting little scenario very, very short clip, but it's a very interesting scenario for sure.
I thought that this was sort of serendipity, right? I was already going to do an interview with you this week anyways, and I'm kind of glad that we held off this long because I wanted to see what was going to happen with the Jeff Bezos situation here, because everybody and their mother has something to say about it right now, right? And likely so, right? I mean, Will Smith drops in your lap, you have to do a show about it. Jeff Bezos like this with Leonardo DiCaprio. For those of you who don't know, let me just this is so short, I will just drop it in here really quickly. This was a very short clip, not even like 6 seconds, right? And we look at the expressions on Lauren Sanchez. Now, anybody who has followed my show for any amount of time knows that I have used Jeff Bezos as an example of a guy who is certainly a blue pill. Well, I think it was an example of how money does not cure beta. And money does not miss. I think it was the show where I was talking about how everybody wants you to, stay on your mission, man, and chase excellence. And again, nothing against, the message for chase excellence. You should, but also it's somewhere along there. You should also learn about the nature of women. So if you're only singularly focused on one thing, that's really kind of a form of isolation. And so here you have the richest man, the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos, and his I don't know, I guess his gal pal, right? That's the 49-year-old. I think she's 49, maybe she's 50 now, but that's Lauren Sanchez who's in there. And if you've noticed in the there you go, in the thumbnail there. Yeah, you like that? How cool was that? I mean, God, you guys don't know what kind of an artist I really am.
That is a work of genius. That really is.
That shot with Leonardo DiCaprio is from Wolf of Wall Street, and then of course I cobbled in Lauren Sanchez's face over. I think that's Margot Robbie. I'm fairly certain. I don't. Maybe it's some other chick. I don't know. And then of course Jeff Bezos. It's almost too easy to find like the perfect shot of Jeff Bezos. And again, this is you got to give him some credit. I mean, the guy has more money than God, but that is not a guarantee of success when it comes to women. Particularly right after he spent like 33, I think it was, what was it, Chris Rock, when Jeff Bezos was getting divorced, Chris Rock said, Jeff Bezos is so rich that he settled his divorce for $33 billion, and he's still the richest man in the world.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy.
But it doesn't guarantee it, right? And then I just let me throw these up here really quickly, just so that I don't waste my time here. That's the look right there. That's an alpha tail as far as in the rational male sense of things, anyways. And I forget what event this was at. Obviously, it's a black tie, formal event. It would have to be some sort of Hollywood thing. Was it the Golden Globes? Was it? I forget what this was.
I think it was some Hollywood type thing. Yeah,
some hoity-toity.
Yeah. Somebody speculated. I don't think it was in the UK because somebody thought it was at that climate thing, but I don't think it was. I think it was.
I don't know. I sincerely doubt that's what it was. Yeah. But if you look at just see if I can get this at the right. I wanted to like right about. I love this one where he's like, that's a good screenshot right there.
Yeah.
But where she's just wrapped right that right there. There it is. That's the alpha tail right there.
Is there a little bit she kind of almost moves a bit towards him as well?
Oh yeah.
Ever so slightly.
That's and I know we get a lot of grief for this in the manosphere. Okay, well we'll go there. Everybody's gonna go put green lines in this. Talk about leaning in and body language mastery. According to John and Modern Life Dating and everything else. When you look at the sort of the physical manifestations of a woman who is sort of aroused by certainly Leonardo DiCaprio. She's barking up the wrong tree. Let's just be honest. Yeah. We all know what Leonardo DiCaprio's dating demography is.
She's not really in his target audience, is she? Let's be honest.
No. And for those of you who don't know why we're laughing at that is because Leonardo DiCaprio, and there's actually graphs of this. I probably should have dug one of them up. Leonardo DiCaprio, his dating history, and for whatever reason, I don't know why this was like turned into an infographic, but from the time he started dating, like I think it was like right after Titanic or something like that, they've tracked the ages of his girlfriends, like the relative average ages of his girlfriends. And so from the time he was like, say, like in his like early 20s to where he is right now, and I think he's got to be at least 50 now, or no, and he's probably like
it's late 40s.
Yeah, mid to late 40s now. And none of his girlfriends have been older than 26 years old. They've been from like 21 to 26 and within that range. And then as soon as they hit 25 or 26, they're out of there.
Yeah. Well, the current one is about 24 now. So she's probably sort of just looking at her watch, waiting for the blow to fall.
Exactly. And it's almost like you have to sort of understand what his nature really is. Like that's just how he is. He's not going to be making any long-term commitments. I think what was funny is I remember when George Clooney I think it was back in the 90s or the early 90s when he was just like the super heartthrob and early to mid 90s, I think, when he was on ER.
Yeah.
People were interviewing him and they were saying, are you ever going to get married? And I think he got married once before and he got a divorce, and he's like, yeah, I tried the marriage thing. It's not for me. And so he was like this confirmed bachelor right up until like whoever he married just, a few 6 years back. Is it Amala? Is that what her name was? I can't remember.
Yeah, Amal somebody. She's a lawyer, isn't she?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Well, so you've got I wanted to set this. I'm trying to give you a layup here, Troy. So you have a guy like Leonardo DiCaprio who is clearly high value guy. Okay? Clearly high value, women want to get with. He's the guy that other men want to be and other women want to bang. Also, you have Jeff Bezos, who is a high value guy from the perspective of he's got a lot of money. Now, when in the manosphere and whatever we're calling this crap right now, we always talk about, make muscle, make money, learn game, right? Those are the three main aspects. You could say, if you want to call it LMS, right? Looks, money, status, whatever you want to call it. When it comes to money, Jeff Bezos has it. Okay. Well, clearly the apex of the money hierarchy in that triumvirate right there. He's at the top of that. He's at the top of that game. Now you've got Leonardo DiCaprio, who does not have as much money as Jeff Bezos. However, he does have the fame. He does have the let's say sex appeal. He's certainly more. He's got the looks aspect, I would say, but I think it's probably more status and affluence than anything else. And we're talking about a woman who is 49 years old. I'm just going to round it off. I think that's last I checked. I think that's how old Lauren Sanchez is right now. But you have her in between a guy who is close to, if not the apex, when it comes to certainly status, like fame wise.
Yeah.
And if not the best, I mean, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. He's looked better. Let's just be honest. He's not The Rock. He's not yoked out like everybody. Oh, I gotta, looks maxers want to think, right? But he does have the fame factor going for him. He is a good looking guy. He has been better looking, I think, in his youth, but okay, he's where he is. But you've got two guys who are really kind of the apex right there. Which one wins out in that situation?
Well, it's kind of the Chad, isn't it? It's the archetypal, it's the Chad-like figure out of the two of them, which I suppose, is that throwing a bone to some of our friends over who bang on about looks the whole time? Is it just looks though, really, with Leo? It's like you said, it's partly looks, but it's also, he's just got that sort of film star pizzazz about him, hasn't it? Gravitas about him, which Jeff Bezos, he's enormously, phenomenally, unimaginably wealthy, but he hasn't got that sexiness about him, has he? And Leo has, and I think it's something to do with that really is drawing her in, I think.
All right. So as if that weren't enough, let me just read this because I actually dug up the this is a story that's in financialexpress.com. So not only are outlets like TMZ and the rest of these places hitting this up, but also the financial place, the financial sector's looking at this. So they've got let's see, where was it? Jeff Bezos has epic boyfriend reaction to Leonardo DiCaprio's "Steal Your Girlfriend" moment, and Twitter is ROFL. So here we go. This is it. It's hard to resist the infinite charm and charisma of Leonardo DiCaprio, so much so that even Amazon's billionaire girlfriend can't help but be smitten by the Titanic actor. It's funny that they still go back to Titanic.
Yeah. How many million years ago that
Interesting. 1997, by the way. A viral video of Lauren Sanchez, Lauren Dirty Sanchez, fangirling on him has gone viral and has also caught the tech honcho's attention. Bezos, in fact, has a witty comeback to the viral 6-second video shared by Barstool Sports. And if you wonder why Dave Portnoy is in hot water, maybe this might have something to do with it. The richest man in the world is a little pissed off at you. And apparently jealous Jeff Bezos, in his reaction, has slyly threatened DiCaprio, asking him to meet him at a place with a steep cliff and fatal drop screams danger. Let us go to that shot because I have that one queued up here too, I believe. Yeah, I do. Here it is. This is the shot that they're talking about. This was in the tweet that he had he came back with. Right now, Jeff Bezos has been a little bit more doofy, let's just say. I mean, he's been sort of the guy who's he's a tech guy. He was never really certainly wasn't a heartthrob in his youth, let's just say. He has put on muscle in recent years. You can see that I think what was funny is I think once he started doing that, then the stuff with Lauren Sanchez started happening. And again, here's a guy who was like, I better get in better shape if I really want to have what I want as far as, a woman in my life. But then he chooses Lauren Sanchez, who has a history of doing exactly what she's doing with Jeff Bezos. But this was his response to, and of course, this is a joke. I get it. It's a joke. He's trying to play it off and be as, kind of, I don't say smooth, but he's just trying to, be tongue in cheek here. I get it. Okay. So don't come at me, as Mr. Literalist. And so his tweet said something like this. It said, "Leo, come over here. I want to show you something." Of course, it says danger, steep cliff, fatal drop. Right? Like he's going to push him off the cliff or something. And of course, Jeff is just joking around, but it makes for good Twitter fodder, let's just say. But I think the take home lesson in all this is, sometimes the AMOG doesn't have to be AMOGing you. Sometimes women will AMOG you for the guy.
Yeah, because if you look at the clip, DiCaprio is kind of trying to get away from her, really, isn't he? Or he's not engaged. He's not engaging her. He's like,
yeah. But okay, so let's since you're the game expert here, and I am, by the way, and just so everything's above board, you are running a new course right now called Cat Academy.
Yes.
And that's and the registration for that is on Friday. Is it, or you might be extending it? We'll see.
We're going to extend it probably over the weekend. But yeah, it's basically in a few days' time, Cat Academy closes, so it's open now for new students.
Okay, well, we'll get into that a little bit later. But as everybody, all my viewers understand, is I'm also working on a 5th book right now, which is I'm hoping at some point, like you and James Tusk and Tom Torero and some of these other guys will use as sort of a comprehensive guide to game. Like, it's not how to, it's a why it works game. And I'm calling it the player's handbook, right? So it's just so like guys like you guys who are in like the coaching or who are in dating coaching, who are in, PUA, for lack of a better term, whatever it is, have sort of a go-to guide. Because one of the main questions I get from guys right now is like, whenever I'm talking about issues of game, like I'll say, you have to have game, you have to have social intelligence, you have to have, you have to understand like social cues and things like that. And I think that's one of the hardest things that a lot of guys have, particularly from the Generation Z young men, as well as like, I would say the last maybe half of the millennial generation as well. Every one of them hits me up and they say, what's the best book to learn game from? And I can give them your book, and I refer them to your series of books. I can refer them to people like Tom Torero or yourself or James Tusk or John from Modern Life Dating. But John doesn't have any books or anything like that. But game is kind of something you have to learn by doing, right? I mean, it has to be something that you're doing on the infield kind of thing. You have to have somebody who is actually sort of giving you instructions as to what be an analysis. Is that you? So
yeah, absolutely. So
I'm hoping that the book that I'm working on right now will be sort of multifunctional in the sense that like it's something that you guys can refer to as to like, okay, here's a techniques like you Mr. Miyagi, right? Wax on, wax off. Here's why wax on, wax off works. That's really what it is. It's not like a how-to book. It's a why-to book.
Yeah.
But in that book, of course, one of the chapters that I cover is the AMOG, which is and a lot of people, I'm already seeing in the chat here. We'll get to it right now. What is an AMOG? What do the letters AMOG stand for? Where did they originate from? And why do we still hear MOG attached to like height MOG or looks MOG or this MOG or that MOG? So where did that come from?
Alpha male of group. And my understanding of it originally referred to kind of scenario where maybe you're in the club and you're talking to a girl and then some other dude pokes his oar in, the archetypal 6'7" Chad rocks up and starts talking to the girl and kind of steals her off you. It's that kind of scenario. Or maybe you're running some game, you're talking to the girl, and then the guy comes in and he starts to clown you, kind of for his own amusement, but also to try and pull in the girl. And that's really what it originally came from. That's what it originally came down to. And like you say, now it's been extended out into these different arenas. So people talk about mogging, but that's really what it came down to. And there were various techniques that were devised as AMOG destroyers, as they were called, in order to try to undermine what the AMOG is doing. Now, how successful those are in reality is kind of open to debate, really. But that's where it all came from.
How would you go about like diffusing that situation?
Well, I believe it's very difficult. There are a couple of things that you can do. The first thing that gets recommended.
Is there anything that's effective?
What, in game in a hole? No, probably. No, obviously there is. But I think with that kind of situation, one of the things that gets recommended a lot is just to completely ignore the guy. Just completely shut the guy out and really focus in on the girl. Because it's almost as if the guy isn't entering into your reality at all. You're not fazed by this thing at all. It just doesn't even impinge on your consciousness. And so you just lock in on the girl. just really, really focused on her, just carry on talking to her as if nothing's happening. And depending on the circumstances, the guy will sometimes then just go away, because particularly if the girl's into you and the girl's kind of compliant with this, then he's just going to feel like an idiot standing there shouting things. So in the end, he's just going to walk off, and that's going to be it. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing that people recommend, which is maybe a bit more risky, is to engage the guy, or to befriend the guy. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
To try and really befriend the guy. And that can work, but it kind of depends how dark triad the dude is. Because if he's really out to get you, then you just being friendly to him it's not necessarily going to disarm him, you know. And then the third thing is to try to clown him. Basically, the third thing is to try to clown him. And there was one line that I remember, which was the guy would come in and start talking to the girl, and you would say something like, "Hey guys, listen to this. This guy can get any woman into bed instantly. His game is that good. Let's hear this." And then you really put the dude on the spot, and then he goes and kind of dries up. So there's three separate strategies there that you can try, but how well any of them work, it's kind of going to come down to how engaged the girl was with you in the first place, how, you know, kind of charismatic the new guy comes across. Because to be honest, if he comes across as really charismatic, and yes, if he is a bit of a Chad, then you could just get blown out of the water, because she hasn't got any emotional connection to you if this is someone you just met. So you've got to be realistic about these things. I take a lot of these things, like the boyfriend destroyer lines that you would get in a similar vein. I take it all with a pinch of salt, because yeah, they sound good on the internet, but in real life, are they really going to work? It's a bit of a crapshoot. But there's three strategies there broadly that you can try depending on the scenario.
Do you think Bezos could have in any way come out of this on top? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's any way. I don't think, even if he had the cleverest line in the world, even if he started doing the cube or something, it wouldn't. You know, I mean, what can you do in that situation? But that's a classic example of where, well, like you say, it's a bit different with those two, because the value is less imbalanced, because you've got Bezos, who is obviously the richest guy on the planet, more or less, and then you've got Leo. So it's kind of, but when somebody of significantly higher value than you comes into an interaction, really, you're kind of screwed. I mean, funnily enough, actually, I was listening to someone's podcast a while back, and I remember another story about Leonardo DiCaprio, which was this guy, this British guy. He's into like social scene, does a lot of social scene type game, and he's not a pickup artist or anything, but he was talking about how he was at this party once in the south of France, and him and his friends, they got all these girls on this table, and they were all just chatting, and they were trying to get them to go to an after party, and it was all going really well. You know, and these were high value guys as well, and these girls were really buying into what these guys had to say, and it was all kind of going really nicely. And then Leonardo DiCaprio comes in with his entourage, and he just describes this moment when it's like this vacuum, and all the girls are just sucked away, and they're just left there sitting there, literally their dicks in their hands, like going, what just happened? Because, of course, as soon as Leo comes in, you know, really all bets are off. You can't really do anything in that situation. You're just outclassed. I thought this was fun. This is great, because I'm gonna put this up here for you, Leo Stone. I disagree. If Bezos made a joke about buying every studio so Leo never worked again, it would disarm disarm himself. Yeah,
it's a funny line, but would it really? Would that look a little bit reactionary?
Flex? Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that. Would that be a flex? Is okay. So here's the funny thing: is I'm looking at like all these Twitter threads about this, and so let me head you off at the pass, commenter guys. Okay, who cares? Who cares? Well, apparently you do, because that's all I've gotten in my Instagram DMs and all I've gotten in my Twitter DMs right now is, are you going to talk about Bezos? Are you going to talk? That's all they want you to say. However, what could he have done? Like, they want me to know, like, how could Bezos have come out on top? I'm like, Bezos he's like a victim of his own success is what Bezos is. Bezos is a victim of his own blue pill mentality. That's what Bezos is. Bezos is rich enough that he could have a new chick every day of the week. And he could have them all within the 21 to 26-year-old demographic range that Leonardo DiCaprio is.
Well, I was listening to Rich Cooper's show about this earlier, actually, and he was making the point, which I don't think anyone can really disagree with. I mean, what's Bezos doing with this lady in the first place? Really? I mean, that's the real question. I mean, she's got, I think she's sort of an unmarried mother. She's got 3 kids. She's certainly late 40s, if not 50s. I mean, she's getting on a bit. Really, why was that his go-to anyway? Before any
She's
of this
a professional
happened?
gold digger on top of everything else.
So really, you kind of think, well, why is he even? He could have done a bit better than that. Let's say. I mean, however you want to measure that, he could have certainly have achieved a bit better than that, given his status and everything. So that would be the first question before we even get to the Leo side of things.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of background on Lauren Sanchez way back in the day. Actually, I remember when the Mackenzie Bezos divorce came down. It was back when me and Pat were still talking about things, and he was just dumbfounded by Bezos's choice of like, well, he's gonna off his ex-wife for someone like Lauren Sanchez when he could be living like Dan Bilzerian. If Dan Bilzerian didn't pay for Poon, okay, he could be living that lifestyle. He could certainly be doing that if he wanted to, but that's not where he goes. He'd rather be with someone like Lauren Sanchez, and that right there, my friends, is the indication of why. You don't have to, he's so rich, he doesn't need to kill the beta. Well, that's true, but that becomes a disadvantage to you later on. So it's like, yes, it behooves you to learn game, if for no other reason that it also teaches you the nature of women and the nature of intersexual dynamics. That's where guys start with all of this. So I want to run down some game stuff. Before I do, let me just ask you this: like, what's Cat Academy all about, and what is it how is this different from the stuff you've done in the past?
So it's called Carisma and Dating Academy, or Cat Academy for short. And it is basically a deep dive into the mindset stroke inner game side of the equation. So we always talk a lot about techniques, what opener are you going to use? What line are you going to use? What if she says this? What if she says that? This is much more a deep dive into the, firstly, how you feel about yourself side of things, because you've got to basically think you are God's gift, essentially. Right. You've got to somehow get to that mindset.
Get some sort of conceitedness going, yes.
Yeah. It's that narcissism, that irrational self-confidence idea. So how do you get to that? And then secondly, then how do you communicate that to the world, right? So that can be through what you wear, it can be through how you dress. Obviously, to some extent, it is through what you say. So there is a whole game element in this course as well. But really, this is the transformation that I went through, because I was a complete, kind of like, I had nothing going on. When I was 18, 19, nothing going on in dating at all. And then when I hit 20, kind of started partying. I went through this kind of like personal transformation when I just got a lot more naturally cocky funny. I got kind of arrogant. I became a bit of a jerk, basically. I don't recommend that to anybody, but it's just what happened for me. And amazingly, rather than getting beaten up all the time, although I probably got quite near to it at times, actually, women started to react to me differently, and I started to get different results in terms of dating. I got a really attractive girlfriend, within the first couple of months. So I was working this nightclub at the time, and even the bouncers, the security who were working there, were like, "How the hell did that guy get with that girl?" And it was all down to my attitude, and it was all down to the way I presented myself. It wasn't about that I became better looking, or I suddenly became 6'7", or I got ripped or whatever. So basically what the course does, it distills all of that knowledge from the last 15, 20 years down into one easily digestible package. So we've got just the digital course, but we also do live webinars as well. And there's also an option where they can get some 2 months worth of WhatsApp training with me also on top. So there's quite a nice comprehensive selection of options there.
And you and James, is James a part of this as well? I didn't know if I asked you that.
James isn't a part of this one, but I may try and rope him into coming to one of the webinars to talk a bit about daytime approach. I
definitely want to audit the class this time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. As it is, this is probably going to be the last time I run Cat Academy, because me and James have got some plans for next year. We're going to be putting some other programs together. So this is probably the last time we do Cat Academy. So, and
you guys just got back from your gosh, I don't even know where you went. Every time I saw you on Rule Zero, you were in the Ukraine, you're in Russia, you're in Estonia. Where did you go? And you're back now, correct?
I'm in London at the moment. So we went to Russia, then we went to Finland because we were doing a boot camp event over there. Then we went back then we went back to Russia. It gets a bit blurry now. It's like a proper tour, you know. Went back to Russia. Then we were in Poland, Warsaw. Then I was in Berlin. Then we did Kiev in Ukraine. Then I went to Belgrade in Serbia, and then back to London. So yeah, it was kind of a crazy, it was kind of a crazy summer, really. And you know what James is like. He's this very driven sort of. Yeah. It kind of. I was thinking while we were doing this, parts of it in Russia, I was thinking this is the closest I'm ever going to get to a rock and roll tour, because it was literally like turn up at the hotel, dump your stuff, right? Okay, let's go out, let's do this, blah blah blah. And I was like, Jesus, this is but it was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot as well, and we saw a lot firsthand in terms of what's happening with dating out there. You know, kind of. Say post-pandemic, but you know what I mean, kind of now that we're pulling out of that.
And you met in person, you met Mystery there.
I did, yeah.
Now this is just for, I hope everybody is as curious as I am about this. Like, what is he still doing, like Venusian arts? Is he still doing the same kind of stuff? Has he sort of like, I don't know, developed into something different now? I mean, clearly he's still doing it if you're meeting him at these events and stuff like that, but what was your impression of Mystery in 2021 compared to, say, like 2005 when the game first came out? Like, what was did he have anything to say? The other question I had is this: does he still think that a lot of the stuff that was going on back, say, in 2005 is still applicable in 2021?
Well, he certainly seemed to. I mean, to put it into context, I didn't have a very long, in-depth conversation with him. Basically, I know his wingman, the guy that he works with, is a guy called Rob Baxter. They go around, they teach boot camps and stuff. So I know Rob anyway from London. So I knew they were in Kiev, and it was kind of inevitable we were going to meet up at some point. But it wasn't really, because we had quite a busy schedule as well. So it wasn't really going to be, we were going to sort of be hanging out with them for hours and hours. But obviously kind of curious to meet up with them. But we just bumped into them in the street one day, and obviously Mystery's there. And, so it's a pleasure to meet you. It's, I was inspired by your books over the years and stuff like that. And, he's a very pleasant guy, very affable guy. I get the impression from what he was saying, the kinds of things he was talking about, I get the impression that his sort of approach to this stuff is probably pretty similar to how it was, because he was talking about things like, I remember him saying, when you merge sets, that is when you bring together, you've got one group here, you've got one group there. He said, when you merge sets, the magic happens. And I think that's the kind of thing that he was saying back in the day. That's the kind of thing he was saying, So I don't think his view of it's changed that much. But I know people saying, is he still doing game? And yes, absolutely he is. I mean, I think he's in his 50s. He is 50, I think. Yeah. And absolutely. He was going out. They do a lot of nighttime stuff. They were going to clubs. He still does his magic tricks, stuff like that. He's got the black nail polish. So, so really very similar, I think, to how he was. So, yeah.
I was just curious about that because as you know, well, I've been doing this for soon to be 20 years, as far as my involvement in just sort of understanding all of this stuff and writing about it. Of course, Mystery was one of the early, I guess, for lack of a better word, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but he was one of the pioneers of game, let's just say. And I think it's interesting because whenever I talk to the guys like Myron and Fresh or other guys who are sort of in the game right now, their outlook is, this stuff is still pertinent, but the context has changed. Clearly there was no Instagram in 2021 was not what Instagram was. Actually, I don't think there was an Instagram back in 2005, 2004, 2003, somewhere around there. Even Twitter wasn't a thing back then. And so I'm wondering, like, what maybe even yours, what's your opinion is on old school, like PUA, or that, like, the fundamentals versus how we contextualize that and how we can use that in, say, 2021 in a social media era.
Well, I think a lot of the principles in that book, the Mystery Method, I think a lot of the principles hold good. And he fused, obviously, observations about evolutionary biology and then pulled out, right, so therefore do this. And I think all of that stuff basically still holds good. But I also do think that, yes, things have moved on a lot in terms of just the whole landscape and obviously the social media, the apps, Tinder, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, all the rest of it. It's just that the whole landscape is very, very different now. And I just don't think it really, and also as well, I feel like the old sort of archetype of the like PUA is a little bit it's a little bit naff now, isn't it? Well, maybe more than that. I mean, it's very old. It's a long time ago. It's just not very cool really in the modern world. And I don't know if all of that stuff is really fit for purpose, because you've got to take this other stuff into account. I mean, what are you doing on Instagram? You know, what's your social media profile like, and how that affects on the sexual marketplace as well. Because talking to Tusk about this recently, there's no doubt that London has got harder. For just as an example, like London's got harder as a place for dating, for doing game. I was working with a guy actually at the weekend who was a very high value guy, decent looking, well spoken, good job, articulate, intelligent, you know, really ticking all the boxes, decent height for all you height cells out there.
Yeah. Here in just a second.
Yeah. You know, or ticking really all of the boxes. And even he was saying to me, describing to me the difficulties he's having with dating in London these days. You know, it's just not what it was back in the early 2000s. It's kind of tough, even for guys who are somewhat above average. So, you know, and that's got, when I was talking to Tusk about this, he was saying, I think the reason for that has got to be, in part, has got to be to do with the effects of social media and dating apps. Like you've talked about, you know, the global sexual marketplace. It's definitely having an effect. Things are tougher, so you've got to just attack the problem in different ways, right?
I think, and I've used this blog post several times on actually my show and Rule Zero, but there was a blog post that Roosh put out where he was predicting what was going to be the future of gaming. Yeah. I think it was as far back as like 2012 or something. And here we are almost 10 years since then. And he was right about a lot of the stuff that's in there. I think when people read that, or if I go and I talk about it, people get a little itchy under the skin there, because I think it hits a little too close to home in some ways. Yeah. Because in other ways, like people say, well, you know, just get out there and do it, you know, go do the work. Okay. Well, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying he nailed it pretty well on some of these, like Fame Plus Game. Was one, and then the other thing is the rise of social media was going to sort of make women spoiled for choice, let's just say, particularly within the demographic of like women 18 to 28 years old. That is the primary demographic that guys want to get with. Well, now, as I've said, and I mentioned in book 5 here, is dating has become brand management. And it's all about, you know, managing your image. And you got to be your own PR person, basically, whether you're a guy or a girl. And again, it took, you know, me talking to these guys is that, you know, Instagram is really the #1 dating app in the world right now, because that's what people go look to see if you're cool enough to date them. So I was wondering about that, because I still think that the principles of old school game and what was developed as a result, or I guess sort of what matured into the red pill and red pill awareness from the old, you know, game pioneers, I think a lot of that still applies today. It's just that the context has changed, and you have to be able to adapt to that. And I was wondering, what are some of the old school techniques that are still relative versus what are the ones that are not relative right now?
Well, I mean, let's think back to early history.
Let's just start with some basic stuff like neg hits, cocky and funny.
Well, I think, okay, so neg's obviously got a lot of bad press, and, you know, kind of probably understandable.
Backhanded compliments, let's just say. People don't even know what a neg hit is anymore.
Yeah. A neg is like when you go in and you sort of say, I don't even think this one's ever worked, but you say something like, oh, nice nails, are they real? You know, right. I don't think this ever really works. But anyway, you know, something like that, where you give a compliment and then you pull it back. And obviously it got a lot of bad press, particularly from women, when women found out about it, and they would say, well, you know, you're just going around insulting women and blah, blah, blah. I think that it certainly helps. What we normally do, or we teach students to do, is go in and make a compliment, because you might as well just be authentic about it. You might as well just go in and say, hey, I just saw you, look really, really cute. I wanted to come over and say hello. So you can do that as an opener. That's fine. But then it does help to pull it back slightly. But you're not going to go in with something like super offensive. It's not about insulting her or anything like that. You've got to be a bit more socially savvy. So I think the neg is, there's something in it, but it needed to be toned down. And I think it has been toned down now.
Do you think that a lot of the critics of, like, say, what is now PUA, because I think a lot of people still have this old school idea that a pickup artist is, looks like Mystery in 2005 with the big top hat and elevator boots and the black nail polish and feather boa and the digital shirt, the digital LED shirt. Like, Mystery, that's not what game has evolved into. Do you think that game has matured since those times?
I think it has, and I think there's a growing acceptance that you need to bring real value to the table, unfortunately. I think there was this illusion in the early days that, you just learn these lines, you just do these things, and it doesn't matter if you're sleeping in the back of a truck or something or whatever, you're sleeping in a dumpster or something. It doesn't matter, because as long as you know game, it's all gonna be great. You're gonna be pulling these Victoria's Secret models and things like that. And I don't know if that was ever true, but I certainly don't think it's true now. I mean, we've discussed this before. I mean, you can probably luck out. You might be able to fool somebody momentarily that you're higher value than you actually are. But I think there's something of a balance between the Rich Cooper sort of do the work ethos plus being socially savvy. It's somewhere in between the two of those things,
right?
Because you've got to be working on your genuine, actual value as well as. But at the same time, if you do that, and like we're talking about Bezos, you neglect to also learn social skills and to also learn about female psychology and how this stuff works, then you could also end up getting taught. So you kind of need both of them at the same time.
Right. I like that. And the fact that sort of tags into this here. What should aspiring red pillars learn from this interaction? Validation of red pill concepts, learn game, know your limits. What do you think? What's the take home lesson from the Bezos situation? The Bezos AMOGing here.
Well,
I'll just throw mine out here. I can be really quick. Okay. Mine is that money, all the money in the world does not cure your social ineptness. It does not. All the money in the world won't buy you game. You have to learn this along the way at some point.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I suppose the other obvious lesson is being the richest or the second richest man in the world or whatever he is now. It does not guarantee genuine desire. And there's a lot of guys in this space who come on and they're either the looks guys or they're like, yeah, man, it's all about money, and that's all it is. Well, if it was all about money, then that wouldn't have happened. That little video wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So I'm basically coming around to saying what you're saying, which is, obviously, max out your money and everything, but you're going to need something else. You're going to need to have a bit of that edge in order to keep her interested. And to be honest, right, here's another thing. I don't think people are focusing on saying, oh, yeah, Leo's better looking than Bezos and all that kind of stuff, which may be true. But I don't even think it's so much about the looks. I think I don't know if you agree or disagree. I reckon it's probably something to do with the way Bezos is. Like if Bezos was a more dominant, sort of charismatic kind of, alpha guy within the relationship, maybe she wouldn't have done that, I mean, maybe she would. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think
maybe it's a personality thing.
Yeah, I do. And I think what's happening right now is you've got Bezos, who is now the richest man in the world and is going to probably have that designation for a long time. You're taking a guy who, if you go and you look at like his old pictures from when he started Amazon back in like 1996 or whenever it was. And, remember, Amazon didn't turn a profit until like 5 or 6 years after. And so he was just, he was on his game. And he was, tunnel vision. He was doing the work. He was chasing excellence. He was, focused on his mission, and that's what he was doing, right? And did that for a very long time. Still is doing that. Although I know he has stepped down as CEO now. Did he just do that? I'm fairly certain he did. But he is. But for the very longest time, he has been doing nothing but focusing on his business and everything else. And now he's getting sort of dragged into the limelight as a result of what happened with his ex-wife, and then now with Lauren Sanchez and everything else. So he's kind of gone from being the nerdy kid who, sort of came up from nothing to being the richest man in the world. And now TMZ wants to talk about him. He's not an actor. He's not an athlete. He's not the only thing his claim to fame is Amazon. I mean, really, he's got other things too, but like he's the richest guy in the world. But you take that guy out of that domain, which was Amazon and, tech. I guess technically you would call him a tech guy, right? He's a tech giant, Amazon. You take him out of that domain and now you put him in another domain. Maybe that's the take home lesson from this. is you take this guy and you give him some sort of success, like like ungodly success, but he's still the dude he was, more or less. I mean, at least up here, when it comes to social savvy and social intelligence and everything else. But he's thrust into the limelight all of a sudden. Would you say that's an accurate assessment?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah, and it goes to prove. I mean, I don't know a great deal about him as an individual. I mean, obviously, he is, without a doubt, he is more jacked than he used to be. He's definitely worked on himself in that regard. It looks like he's pulled himself up to some extent, but I don't know what he's like in the dynamics of that relationship. I don't know how much of a dominant force he is in that relationship with her. On the other hand, like Rich was pointing out, she probably had a couple of glasses of wine, and it is Leonardo DiCaprio. She probably watched Titanic back in the day, like all of those girls did. She's probably like, oh my God, maybe it was just a little involuntary thing. But on the other hand, if he was if Bezos was really the kind of, archetypal, like stone cold sort of alpha that, all of these masculinity accounts on Twitter and stuff, pretend to be, if he was actually that guy, maybe she wouldn't have acted in that way. Do you know what I mean? Maybe she would have been more in his frame. So it could be an argument that he doesn't really have the frame somehow.
I'm wondering, now this is just me spitballing here, but I'm wondering if, like you said, in some ways it might have been involuntary. Like if she's like 2 glasses of wine in, then of course, it's going to be an involuntary reaction. Also, I want to point out, she's like 49 years old, I believe. So let's just be honest here. If she's not menopausal, she is certainly perimenopausal at this point. So depending on what the opportunity is and the opportunity cost is, sometimes maybe that gets superseded by an opportunity, or what her subconscious believes is an opportunity. Because a lot of guys will they came at me like this. So, well, she's 49. She knows she's completely out of his league. He would never go for her. That's not the point. Of course not. Of course not. Okay. The point is that is still sort of this internal, like subconscious, like lizard brain response to seeing high value. Is that ever going to happen? No, of course not. He's not going to go bang Lauren Sanchez. He's got way better chicks at home, right? He's not going to do that. But that's not the point. The point is looking at the difference between, say, like, I'm just going to say alpha, I'll say swag, alpha fame / status versus the most money in the world. So now you're taking the apex of money and the apex, let's just say for sake of argument, the apex of fame and status, and you're putting them together. Which one wins? Right. I will guarantee you there's some black pill channel, some doomer boy channel right now that is making this observation as we speak right now. I guarantee you that's happening. So what trumps what? Looks trump everything? Does affluence and status and fame trump everything? Does money trump everything?
Well, from that example, you'd make the argument, well, obviously looks and kind of sexuality, sex appeal or whatever trumps money, but then you are muddying the waters a little bit, because it's not like Leonardo DiCaprio's the pool boy. He is actually also, I mean, he's nowhere near Bezos rich, but he's a very wealthy guy. It's not, she wouldn't be short of a few bob if she, if amazingly she did end up, shacking up with him. So I'm not sure, it's difficult to disentangle them, isn't it? Because yes, he's got the look side of things out of the two of them, but he also has considerable status himself, albeit of a different kind. So,
right. Well, I think what's funny is there's almost this self-contradicting when it comes to what trumps what, because when we talk about like a guy like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, what's the first thing out of guys' mouths when they see this, they split up or something? I go, well, if a guy like Brad Pitt can't make it work, what chance do I have? Right.
Yeah.
You're looking at apex examples, and I should remind everyone we're still looking at some pretty apex examples in this situation as well. Yes. Was it tongue in cheek? Was it funny? Yes, it was. It was just probably you won't even remember this time next year, but that's that. Basically, that's where that comes. So but you did. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. You had
I was just going to say. Well, I suppose a sort of black pill take on it would be to say, well, even if the guy does get together with a woman that's attractive, or the sub 5 guy does get a girlfriend or whatever. So let's say in this case Bezos, he's got together. Okay, she's getting on a bit, but she's an attractive woman. But even though he's got together with her because he's got the money, he's got the wealth, the status, whatever, she's not really into him. And what she's really looking for is that opportunity to find that alpha Chad who she really has that genuine desire for. And I mean, is that what we were seeing there in that clip?
Okay.
They would argue it was. I mean,
now, okay, but I have to go there. I'm going to go there. Here we go. You guys are going to hate me if I don't. When I was younger, being 6'6", decent looking, in good shape, 100,000 plus per year would get me initial interest, but my social ineptness would kill it. Yes. So height. I talked about this. I've got a thank you, Tom, for making this clip, because I talked about this on Sunday about the height issue here, because a lot of guys who are like height mogs, right? Yeah. Let's look at that. Let's look at the facts here. Let's look at the studies here. So we got to look at this. Hold on. We got to go, and where is it? There it is. All right. Jeff Bezos, height 5'7". Got it? Okay. So we have that in the bank right now. I don't have an overlay for this, but I'm looking at Leonardo DiCaprio, height 6 foot. Okay.
He's been height mogged. He's been height mogged. He's been
height mogged. He's been height mogged. Okay. Now this was the study that I brought up last on Sunday. The tall men were perceived as more socially attractive. This is Rob Henderson, evolutionary psychologist. Better adjusted, more masculine, and as having greater professional status when compared with short men, but not with men of average height. Shortness is more of a liability than tallness is an asset. Okay, so that's this is from PsychNet, and then the best part of this was this, and this is where I wanted to get to. Okay, so there's a University of Chicago did this I guess statistical analysis between money versus height and what makes a guy more attractive. And this is what it boiled down to: a man who is 5'6" tall, only an inch tall, or only an inch under Jeff Bezos, by the way, needs to earn an additional $175,000 per year to be as desirable as a man who is about 6 feet tall, which is, of course, our good friend Leonardo DiCaprio. A 6'2" man can earn $30,000 less than a 6 foot man and be viewed as equally desirable. How do they come to this? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is the height calculator right here. So if we go and you look at this now, there isn't unfortunately they didn't do 5'7". They just did it in increments of 2 inches. But let's round it off. Let's give him an extra inch there. 5'8" versus the height differential here. So you're looking at an additional income is needed by men. If you're 5'8" of $138 per $1,000 of your how much money you make. So by those statistics, let's clear the air here, height maxers and looks maxers. Remember this, that height is less of an advantage than being short is a disadvantage. So economically speaking, what would make you more attractive? And in this case, we're talking about the guy who's got the most money in the world at 5'7" is still not having the same effect as a guy who is 6 foot tall, but also has the fame and the gravitas that goes along with that.
Yeah, well, somebody in the chat has said, so Joe Adler's saying, I'm 6'4" tall. Women only like tall men if they have a symmetrical face. If you don't have a symmetrical face, your height is useless. I mean, the one thing I would say is over the summer, we taught a couple of guys who were 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", two separate guys on separate events. And one of them was pretty well put together dude, very articulate, fun guy to be around and stuff like that. But he wasn't, and I observed them, I went out with them. He wasn't getting just these women throwing themselves at him by any means. Mm-hmm. In fact, he was getting, blowouts. He went and approached one very attractive girl and he got her phone number, and then she kind of, just didn't respond to the text afterwards and stuff like that. So this whole thing of like, if you've got the height, it's an easy win. It's not true. And then we had another dude who was about 6'4", 6'5", and he was, a little bit needed some work to do on the social, calibration side of things, let's say. And it was certainly no advantage to him at all. Do you know what I mean? In fact, if anything, it was a little bit, it could almost have been seen as a disadvantage because he was very tall, but because he was quite a little bit sort of socially uncalibrated, it kind of almost, girls were like, whoa, kind of almost freaked them out. So I think what this dude is saying is correct. I think height in itself, it's actually, guys just obsess about it online, but it's really not the be all and end all. You've got to bring some other stuff along with it as well.
And what is that other stuff? What is the congruence? I would assume. I want to get into issues of like being congruent in your game with like you were just saying a moment ago about like, actually being on your game, having that authentic value along with it, but also learning game and social savvy along with it, because at some point you need to have both of those. They have to come together at some point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of different parts to it, really. I think that you have got to be a bit of a cool guy. You've got to have a bit of an edge to you, right? You can't just, even if you're 6'4", you walk over and you're sort of very shy and self-effacing and a bit vanilla and a bit dry. It's not really going to get her excited. Do you know what I mean? If you rock up and you're like, oh, well, I've been working in accounts for 4 years and my 401k is looking really good. And, you're that kind of dude. It's not going to set her world on fire. It's not going to set anyone's world on fire, right? You want to have a bit of an edge to you. An edge, how do you define that? Well, it's maybe a little bit dark triad, bringing a little bit of underlying sexuality into these interactions. Because what a lot of guys we find do is they go in and they kind of know the sort of stuff to say because they've watched videos, they've watched Tom Torero, James Tusk, whatever. They kind of know stuff to say when they walk up to a girl, but they're not really bringing any flirtation into the arena. They're walking up, they're saying lines. Oh, you look nice. You look French. Are you French? So how long have you? But it's not. They're not flirting. They're not doing game. And so it doesn't ignite. There's no sexual spark there, and that's really what you need to bring to the party.
I see.
So yeah, it's a combination of those things.
Torsia, you look French. She's in the chat.
Exactly. Right, you need that little raised eyebrow,
Yeah. So I want to get into some basics here. Clearly, you have two guys who are very high value. I think we can at least say from in their respective, their strengths, money or affluence or fame or whatever, these guys are definitely both, at the top of their game, their aspect, those. So we would say that at the very least, we would say Leonardo DiCaprio, certainly a high value guy. Jeff Bezos, in his way, in his domain, definitely a high value guy. I want to get into some nuts and bolts with respect to game. So my first question is this, because this is actually a prime chapter in the book that I'm working on, is demonstrating higher value. And this is not only is this a natural thing that guys kind of do, I think, without really realizing that they are, but also when it comes to game and it comes to like sort of understanding those demonstrations, you can also manufacture that as well. So can you discuss like what is DHV, which is demonstrating higher value?
Well, you've got to be subtle about it, haven't you? This is the thing. And it's a difficult balance to make, because what you don't want to do is be a braggart where you just rock into the interaction and you're like, hey, my Lambo's parked outside and check out my watch. And yeah, I've got a new house in the south of France and all that kind of stuff, because it's just going to look try hard. It's going to, and I know people are going to disagree in the chat. They're like, no, that dude's going to get laid because he's got money. But it looks try hard. It's a bit tacky. It's just not going to fly for most girls. So there's got to be an element of subtlety to it. And I think that the way that you, and this really is what I teach in Cat Academy, is the way that you demonstrate higher value is actually through the way that you can comport yourself socially. It should be implied. It's show, not tell. It should be implied rather than overtly stated. And actually, I have to say, even hanging out with, like somebody like Tristan Tate, I was there one time when he got the phone number of a waitress in this place where we were. And even someone like him, he's not there overtly saying, oh, why don't you have a look at my Instagram? Look at these cars, look at this money, blah, blah, blah. It's implied, Now, obviously, he's well dressed. He's in a certain place. Maybe he's wearing a watch or something like that. But it's not something he screams about. It's something that you should just emanate from you so that they pick up on it. Right. And that's the subtle thing that you've got to get your head around.
Yeah. See, I was in the chapter on DHV that I'm working on right now. In fact, I'm glad we're talking about this because I just finished this chapter. It seems to me, and I don't know, I forgot where I picked this up. It might have been So Suave back in the day, but there are displays of higher value and then there are demonstrations of higher value. DHV is what everybody's mostly familiar with, demonstrating higher value. Yeah. And then, so the first way people were talking about demonstrating higher value is within your conversation, like slipping in little spikes of, like, oh yeah, when I was in the south of France, I did this, like an interesting story kind of thing where you're just sort of like slipping in just a casual conversation about like, oh yes, when I was in the military, right, or when I was at university in Harvard, blah blah blah, that kind of stuff that is just sort of slipped into conversation that doesn't sound like it's contrived. Would you consider that a demonstration of higher value? Because you can't really display that unless you've got your diploma hanging on the wall right there.
I think I think that's fine to do that as long as you do it you've got to just be subtle about it. You've got to be nuanced about it, because anything that tips over the edge, and there's obviously women in the chat maybe agree or disagree with this, but it seems to me that anything you say that seems like you're overtly trying to impress them is probably going to be counterproductive. It's going to count against you, because she's going to think, well, hang on a minute, this dude's just bragging. He's showing off about things to try and get with me. So you can do it, but you've got to sort of do it in a very subtle way. And that takes a bit of practice, I think, for many people.
There's an art to it. Yeah, I think a lot of guys really, when I throw out the joke there on it's now a joke. It wasn't a joke before, but like whenever I put out the picture of a girl on Twitter and I say, how would you open? A lot, of course, no one who follows me on Twitter understands that used to be a practice that old school PUAs would, use with their students, whatever. Say, how would you open this girl? Well, I wouldn't. I would never go open that girl. Blah, blah, blah. She's a goth chick. She's a sporty chick.
Not high quality enough.
It's like, it's not what the point of the exercise is. It's you coming up with like sort of this witty opener for that particular, in that particular context with a girl who looks a particular way. It's not that you would actually go and do that. It's like, if you were in that situation, if you found that kind of person attractive, what would you say? And I don't think a lot of people really make the connection, because what they think of is they think that it is, okay, what line should I repeat? Like what rote memorized line do I know that I could repeat to this? And it's like, it's not about rote memorization, it's about improvisation. And I think that when it comes to like demonstrating higher value, it's also about like at least the look, anyways, the appearance or the improvisation of demonstrating that higher value, as opposed to displaying that higher value, because anybody can display higher value. Like I was looking at the what was it? I think it was the book by David Buss. I forget what it is. Oh, Men Behaving Badly, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about these studies about these guys who were like valet drivers for like in Miami or in Vegas or whatever, and they would be responsible for driving like Ferraris and McLarens and Lambos and everything else. And the first thing they do once they get into those cars is they start taking pictures of themselves in the car to give the impression or the perception that they are higher value. So displays of higher value, I think today, are much cheaper than they were back, because you used to have to be able to actually have the Lambo, right?
Well, you can hire planes now, can't you? There's places, I think is it in Russia or
maybe interiors of them?
Yeah, but even in Russia, sorry, maybe even Europe, you can hire a plane for the morning and go in and take loads of pictures for your Instagram. So it's kind of crazy, because obviously people have cottoned on to this fact that everyone wants to flex on social media, and there's a market for that now, Right. So it's all that kind of thing. Yeah, turn up to the hotel for the morning, just buy coffee in the lobby and get some pictures of yourself, and it's all that kind of thing, isn't it? And I suppose that's the thing as well. You've got to be able to back it up, haven't you? If you're going to play that game, if you're going to play the I'm an Instagram, influencer kind of rocking out in Dubai kind of game, you've got to then be able to back that up in real life. Otherwise, play a different game, right?
Right. Listen, my point was, this is like what we were talking about before, like the shifts in old school game, like displaying higher value versus demonstrating higher value. Like, it's, to me anyways, from in the social media era, displays of higher value, I think, are less impressive right now than they are. It might get you in the door. It might get you, like, the woman believes that you're actually, driving a Lambo. But once you get to that point where having that conversation, you're actually on a date, or you're actually interacting with that person, that's make or break time right there. That's when congruence has to be tight, right?
It's funny. Yeah, it's kind of funny, because I was actually, I always come back to talking about these guys, but we met up with the Tates in not there's anything wrong with folks. It's just go back. It's always the example of the sort of apex alpha in this space, isn't it? But we sort of met up with those dudes in Kiev for a bit, and Andrew was telling a story about how he went for a dinner with a bunch of guys a bunch of people who are Bugatti owners. And he was like the youngest Bugatti owner around this table of these probably old guys who are, whatever. And he turned up with a couple of girls, a couple of women that he's dating or whatever. And apparently these other guys around the table were their jaws were on the floor, like not because of the girls were attractive, but because they could see there was this genuine desire there coming back from these women. And these guys, if they were getting dates and getting sex and things, it was kind of a bit transactional. It was kind of like, oh, I'm a rich guy. Okay, I'm a 23-year-old Instagram model. Give me the money to fly to Dubai in a 5-star hotel and, whatever. It's all a little bit transactional. They could see that this desire that Andrew was getting was not. And so, again, it's just this whole thing. Money in itself, it's not gonna. It's not the be all and end all. It doesn't really make. It makes a difference in the sense that there are probably some women who are just, if you're not of a certain level, you're just not, there's a glass ceiling. Right. But beyond that, it's not the money itself that gives you the sex appeal. It's not the money itself that makes her want to, have sex with you, right? It's the extra stuff that you've got, and that's not so easily acquired. Yeah, and even rich guys need to learn this stuff.
It's that authenticity, I think, too, as well. I know a lot of guys will say, fake it till you make it, but I think a lot of guys get really pissed off at that notion, at that concept, because especially guys who feel like they've already made it, and other guys who are faking what they took their sweet time to get to that point of that status and that that stature or whatever it is, and they see some guy faking. I mean, if I had to go through all the work it took to get a Lamborghini or McLaren, and I saw some kid who was posting pictures of another McLaren somewhere on Instagram pretending like he actually had that, or trying to front as if he had that, if you were the guy who actually did have that, you probably get pretty pissed off at that, right? I mean, you want the authentic, real deal. So I think there's sort of this back and forth between guys who actually have high value versus the guys who are faking high value to get to the same, end goal which is, get a hot girl kind of thing, and be impressive, I guess, is the thing. Let me throw this one out here real quick. This is Wolf. Thank you for that. 20 euros. Most men will not receive this genuine desire. Thank you for being on topic. even from their wives on first dates. Rollo, keep up the good work. Men must rise, and I think we are at a beginning of a new era. I do too. Great greetings to all brothers from Greece. Wow, checking in from Greece. I'm glad you brought that up, though, my friend, because I was just looking at this. I wasn't even going to use this, but I thought this was an interesting tweet that I got a hold of today. And it's this guy. I won't read the whole thing, but it's this guy who's like, he's complaining on Reddit, and he's talking about how his birthday sucked. And he's like, I'm mid-30s here, normally not one to complain today, but but today is my birthday and it sucked. Actually, it didn't suck for him. So I'm going to be a whiny bitch. Married, sole breadwinner, wife stays at home, is a stay-at-home mom. My really clearly requested birthday present requests were: 1, an enthusiastic blowjob, and 2, breakfast made for me, even a bowl of cereal. I don't care, just a little effort and show that they really care, right? Now, he goes through the birthday timeline. He wakes up at 6 a.m., super quickie vanilla sex with wife, no blowjob, toddler cries as we're finishing. So ends super quick. Okay, now, basically, I'm not going to read the rest of this because he goes through the rest of his day. I'm sure that it's actually a 2-part thing. So essentially, I know. So he goes through the whole day, hour by hour, about like what, how his birthday sucked because of all this. And of course, what's the first thing anybody says? You stop being a whiny little bitch. But the real take-home message, I think, in that is really what Wolf was just saying a second ago, which is it's that genuine desire. It's like, if you are making requests for your birthday to get a Hummer, that's actually the problem right there. It's not your whiny bitch. That right there is the source. You're only addressing the symptoms, not the disease. And I think so my next question is this: do you think that game is something that is necessary for a good, healthy relationship? Because in the comments, everyone says, well, what if you just want one girl? What if I'm just looking for that one special girl? Do you think, you know what I'm going to say, but do you think that game is a necessary element to a healthy relationship?
I I think it is. I think it has to be. And I mean, it's been said before that a relationship is game on hard mode. And I really believe that's the case. I mean, I think it's one thing meeting a few girls casually and spinning a few plates and stuff like that. I mean, that's doable. Some guys think that that's going to be very difficult, but that's definitely doable in this day and age if you get your act together. But maintaining a longer term relationship with somebody is very difficult. It's very, very difficult. And obviously hats off to someone like you, Rollo, who's the success your marriage and everything, and other guys that I know, Ryan and people like that who do this over the long term. I mean, you need to at least have a very, very clear understanding of female nature and intergender dynamics. And well, you've talked about you don't do game, you become the game. And I think that's what you have to do that, because you can't be in a situation where you are constantly doing game. It's just not feasible, right? So you have to embody this stuff. But I'm afraid if you don't embody this stuff, I do think in this day and age, you're going to have problems. You're going to hit problems down the road because there's too many temptations. There's too much sort of, we don't regard marriage as seriously as maybe we used to societally. There's too many roadblocks in the way that are going to trip you up if you're not very tight on this kind of stuff.
There's too much disincentives, I would say.
Yeah.
Incentives are wrong and the disincentives are right at this point. When it comes to like legalized, Western style marriage, for sure. But once again, when people ask me, I would hate to be Rollo, he has to game his wife all the time. Again, it's not me gaming my wife all the time. It's just part of who I am. Right? I've been talking about this, writing about this for 20 years. Give me, at least throw me one bone. Okay. I've been doing this for a while and I understand my nature. I understand my wife's nature. I understand our relationship's nature. And when I'm dealing with women that I've just met on the first day, I understand what I'm dealing with when I have to deal with a girl at a promo or whatever else that I'm doing. So it becomes part of, like you were saying before, internalized game. And I think you said that that's going to be part of CAD Academy as well. As far as,
yeah, absolutely. Because the whole thing,
would you call it inner game or internalizing game?
Inner game, which is basically, so in the concept that there's two games being played at any one time. You've got the external game, which is in the case of dating. Okay, so what am I going to say to this woman? What if she turns up late? What if she flakes on me? What do I say in reply to this text? It's all of those external things. But equally, or if not more importantly, you've got the internal game that you are playing against yourself. So I think I'm too old. I think I'm too short. I think I'm too fat. I think she's out of my league. I don't think dating's possible anymore in 2020. Or I have very low self-esteem. I think I'm a bunch of crap, etc., etc. You've got to get that stuff ironed out. You're battling against yourself. You've got to stop battling against yourself first if you're going to have any chance of winning out on the external game. Okay. And so CAD Academy is a transformative program that takes guys through that process. So it enables them to go from being, maybe having some of those challenges that I've just listed, coming out the other side, much more confident, much more ready to just get out there into the field and, apply the principles of dating as we know them.
What do you think is the number one problem that guys struggle with when they come looking for game, when they come looking to the red pill? What do you think is the number one thing that they're struggling with?
It's a variety of things, because obviously you do get guys with different challenges and issues. When I've been working with Tusk, we've got guys from a very low sort of level, who need a lot of work on their social skills, up to very, very well put together guys who just need a little bit of tweaking. So from that point of view, it's a variety of things. But some of the key things I think are, it really is the inner game stuff. It really is this doubt in oneself. It's not being, I suppose you might want to say traditionally masculine, but another way of putting it is to say just not being confident in themselves as being the prize, or putting themselves first in an interaction, or walk into an interaction thinking, do you know what? I am worthy. I am somebody who's worthy of you getting to know me, and I've got a lot to offer. And if you don't think that, will screw you. Most of us go into interactions putting the woman subtly on a pedestal where it's like, oh, what do I do to impress her? And it should be the other way around, because you should be a guy who's self-actualized. You've got stuff going on in your life. You're working towards a bigger purpose. You're like, actually, no, I'm a big deal. Now, if she doesn't buy into that, okay, that's fine. But, that's not going to change my view. That is my frame. And I think that is that key thing that really, and I think that underlines it, because the other thing is as well, a lot of guys that we teach live tend not to, as I said, bring that kind of sexuality into an interaction, bring that flirtatiousness. But I think that's founded on the same thing. They're not confident enough in themselves to do that. Do you know what I mean? So it really all does start inside, and then it emanates out from that.
Yeah. I've told guys before, people would ask me about, like, when I was writing The Rational Male, I didn't sit down and go, okay, I'm going to write The Rational Male. I mean, as I've said in the past, a lot of the stuff that's in my, actually about 90% of the stuff in the first book was derived from conversations that I've had over, by that time, probably about 10 or 12 years. So when I put that together, I, started the blog. I resisted doing the blog for a long time. Because I really enjoyed sort of the back and forth of, like, so have a forum, format, so that I could get, input and then just sort of, develop ideas. Then I started, I coalesced them into the Rational Male blog, and then put them into the book, and then had to rewrite everything so that it would fit in the book. But one of the things that guys will tell me, and I still see this in sort of like writers forums and things, is like, what is it that got you to start writing a book? And I know you're an author as well too, so you had to have gone through this at some point. But I think one of the things, my major obstacle for writing a book, or for putting the whole thing together, was not so much like sitting down and actually doing it. It was getting over the idea that, like, people would actually want to read what I have to say. Right. And I'm glad I got over that, obviously, because now I've got coming up on 5 books now. But I think at some point you have to be self-important enough to say, yeah, people would really care about what I have to say, and I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to float it out there, and we'll see what happens. And I think there's something similar that goes along when it comes to sort of thinking about yourself, or changing your mind about yourself to the degree where you go, you know what? I'm my own mental point of origin, right? I'm going to be the one who, any decision that I'm faced with, I have to be the first thing that jumps into my head. And I think that is probably one of the major hurdles that guys have when they're coming to this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're conditioned that way. And I think it's partly the sort of egalitarian sort of society, isn't it? Everyone gets a participation prize, that sort of thing. And also on top of that, well, especially Britons. I mean, they say Americans are different, but I don't think you guys are that different, really. But especially Britons, we're quite a bit self-deprecating anyway, a bit self-effacing, and you've got to flip that round, particularly to stand out in today's market, because everybody, like you said, everybody is their own brand manager. The successful dudes out there are going around selling themselves. They're like, hey, I am the shit. I'm a big deal. And if you're not competing on some level with that, then you're just going to get lost in the noise. And, but also, like you said, any sort of writing, any kind of creative act, you've got to have a certain sort of, you've got to have a little bit of narcissism in a way, because it's kind of like, especially a book, because it's kind of like, well, why am I going to sit here for hours, in a dark room writing this thing, to go through that whole process. You've got to think quite highly of yourself to assume people are going to want to read it. And that's not a bad thing. That's just what you have to do in order, if you want to get your ideas out there into the world. So yeah, you're right. I think it is a good analogy for this process in dating as well.
I try to elaborate on that in the second book with respect to mental point of origin, because I use that term a lot. And I think people get a little bit mixed up in it, because they think that I mean, like, oh, just put yourself first and be number one. And, it's not about be selfish. It's not about be number one. It's about actually placing your own ego as the first thing that comes into your mind when you're faced with a thought or a decision or whatever else that you have to do. It can't be your mom. It can't be your wife. It can't be your girlfriend. It can't be your, whatever tribe you happen to belong to, your religion. It has to be you that comes into it first. And then after that, you have to decide, okay, who's going to benefit from this? Who's not going to benefit from this as a result of this decision or this choice?
Yeah.
So that's why I sort of said it's got to be something that is like spontaneous. It has to be second nature. It has to be something that is inner game, right? It has to be something. I think the key to inner game is actually becoming your mental point of origin, or internalizing game to the point where you go, you know what? I'm important enough to make myself the person that I'm thinking about first.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm thinking I know a couple of guys who have been very successful with women, very successful with dating, and they're nothing to do with any of this. They're not to do with this dating industry or red pill or anything like that. They're just regular guys. And both of them have this sort of idiosyncratic nature to them, where they'll just, in a social situation, they'll just kind of say anything they want to say. even if it sounds a bit weird. They're not afraid to act even a bit weird, because or just say random things and just kind of mess with people's heads a little bit, because how other people react to that, they just don't care. They're just not fazed by it, you know. So they could walk into a sort of social interaction and literally do whatever the hell they want and let the chips fall where they may. And most of us aren't willing to do that unless we work towards it, because we feel like, oh, I don't want to upset somebody, or I don't want to seem arrogant, or I don't want to seem X, Y, and Z. And actually, it's about sort of putting all that to one side and thinking, no, I am the center of attention. I'm my own mental point of origin, like you say. I'm going to entertain, you know, it's that self-amusement thing. I'm going to amuse myself. I'm going to do what the hell I want because I'm important enough to be able to get away with that.
This is a really good one. Let me put myself back in there. Wet Beaver. Thank you, Wet Beaver. Here's your 10 pounds, pal. How would you define game? I understand it, but I want to translate the concepts to my non-English speaking friends. We don't have a word for it, just a simple short definition of it. I think a lot of guys get hung up on that word game. So how would you define in intersection dynamics in our perspective, how would you define game?
Well, he's asking for a simple definition, which I'm probably going to just go on for 20 minutes. So I've got to try and think of something pithy. I mean, it's basically social skills. It's basically social skills on steroids, isn't it? It's social skills with an end game in mind. Is that simple enough? Does that make sense? It's basically social skills. You've got to learn how to influence people in a social setting, but it is with a particular aim in mind, which is to attract women.
Yeah, I in the book that I'm working on right now, and I wanted to see if I could find the quote, but I'll just paraphrase what I was saying, is that game is a set of social and behavioral skills that are used in conjunction, let's just say, with an understanding of intersexual dynamics, right? With red pill red pill awareness. The red pill is the theory, game is the practice. Game is applied red pill. I think maybe that's the best way I can put it. And each one is incomplete without the other. So if all you're doing is just sitting reading my books, please, I'm glad you're read Troy's books too. But if all you're doing is sitting there and go, okay, I'm going to read this stuff now, I'm going to be a guru. No, you're not. You have to practice it. You have to. It's not just wax on, wax off. You actually have to go out there and put the theory into practice, and the practice is the game. So when people ask me, well, what do you mean by game? Today, it's not just pickup lines. It's not mystery method. It's not Venusian arts. It's not RSD. It's not any of that stuff right now. When I think of game in the general sense, it is a set of behavioral and social skills that will enable you as a man to interact and successfully go from like single and sexless to getting into a relationship with that girl, having sex with that girl, and hopefully maybe even later on down the road, depending on what your choices are, start a family with them. Right? It's teaching those skills and applying those skills, intersexual dynamics. It's applied intersexual dynamics is what it is. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's probably actually
I need to write that down. Now I got to put that in the book.
I mean, applied intersexual dynamics is probably the shortest way of putting it, maybe.
Yeah, I think I like that. I like that one. It's a little bit a little short and pithy there. How to handle girls who nag you to take pics of them for their Instagrams. Walk away. Should I just ignore them who are Insta obsessed? Or will we have to adapt?
I don't know. I don't think, find other girls, really. I don't think, it's not like every woman on the planet is Insta obsessed. Two girls that I was dating recently, one of them didn't even have Instagram because she's a high quality woman. And the other one did have Instagram, but she didn't post very much on it. And she certainly was never asking me to take pictures. So it's not, there are plenty of women out there who aren't like that. Do you know what I mean? So
can you leverage that to a game advantage? We always talk about these girls who are like, they have an Instagram boyfriend who's like taking pictures of them and, on the beach and look at me, you're basically aiding in their sexual advertising essentially. But if you have what girl doesn't have an Instagram right now? I'm sure there are some, but let's just say the vast majority of women, especially young women who are in the sexual marketplace, have an Instagram or they have some sort of online social media presence. And as such, they are always trying to take pictures of themselves, even in the most inopportune situations. Now, could you not Now, this is just me, you and I. Okay, we're going to develop a game technique. See, you guys get your money's worth today. Could you not use that and leverage that sort of self-absorption to use it as an opener? I remember when Roosh would always say, you know, it's hard to get these girls off their iPods or whatever. They always got their headphones in, and they're always doing something, and you can't, like, the biggest block is a woman's like cell phone. Could you not, at least in 2021, could you not use that to your advantage and say, hey, I'll take a picture of you, I'm really good at that, you know, and then use that as sort of your opener?
I guess you could, yeah. It's almost an extension of the kind of Goldman, well, RIP, you know, the Goldman sort of camera game thing, isn't it? It's sort of camera, Instagram game. So, yeah, I think you definitely could. I mean, if you walk around any major city, you know, you're going to see girls doing that stuff. You know, there's girls out and about. They're sort of doing the duck face. They're doing the pouting, taking selfies and stuff like that. So you definitely could. I mean, the only thing with it is, I suppose it's a good way to start the conversation. I guess you don't want to look like you're supplicating too much, sort of thing. But I think it's a good way to open, for sure. Because yeah, there is so many girls doing it.
I was thinking that I know that, like, I've seen guys even on Rule Zero, you know, we're talking about, you know, being an Instagram boyfriend and everything. I go, yeah, I mean, if you're involved with that person, that, yeah, you're cucking yourself essentially. But I would say that I think that's women's sort of self-absorption and vanity and you know, addiction, cell phone addiction, can be leveraged if you're smart enough to do it. I mean, witty enough and see an opening, and you can improvise for that. Now, we're getting pretty close to time here, but I have to ask you this question. I wanted to have this discussion with you at some point. When in Cat Academy or whatever, are you teaching direct game or indirect game? And can you give a breakdown of what both of those concepts are?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I am primarily teaching direct game because I think that it's just more, not necessarily even more effective. It's just more authentic, and it gets to the point more quickly, because I think that guys, you need to get out of the gray area as quickly as you can. Is she interested? Is she not? If she isn't, okay, fine, move on. So basically the difference between the two is, indirect game is when you go up and you speak to a woman that you're interested in, but you don't make it clear up front that that's why you're speaking to her. So maybe if you're in an art gallery and there's a picture of, you know, you're both standing by a painting, and you make some comments about the painting, okay, in order to kickstart a conversation. And it's not necessarily immediately clear that you are hitting on her, right? Direct game is the opposite of that, whereby you will go up to a girl and you will basically say, listen, I just saw you. You're really pretty. You look very cute. You look nice. You look stylish, you look interesting, you know, whatever it is. I had to come over and say hello. My name's Troy. Okay. And that's the key difference. And what we are doing now is much more of the latter. It's much more direct. It's just going up, expressing interest, and then having a little bit of banter, having a little bit of flirtation, and just gauging her response. And if her response is, you know, is she, you know, clearly that she's just not into it, then at that point we just chalk it up to experience and go on to somebody else, you know. I think the days of sort of, because you're only going to be able to convert a really small minority of women. It's been said before, isn't it? You've got no girls, you've got maybe girls, and you've got yes girls. So the no girls are the girls that you meet, and they're just not interested in you. They're just not into you at all. And those girls, no matter how tight your game is, no matter how clever, you know, your techniques are and things like that, you're just not going to convert them. So you may as well not waste your time. Then you've got the girls who just like you off the bat anyway, you know, and you can tell that because their eyes light up, their eyes go big, you know, they're just engaged with you immediately. They're just interested, and that's great. But then you've got these girls in the middle who are sort of like, yeah, okay, he's all right. You know, it's not a definite no. I'm not sure. And that's where the game is played. That's where you might be able to influence a little bit. But what you want to do up front is you want to set the context. So this is man to woman. This is me approaching you, not because I want to be friends, not because I want to talk about fashion or, you know, be your best friend or whatever. It's because I'm interested in you. Right. In the context of that frame, you know, I'm a little bit of a challenge, though. I want to find out a bit more about you, want to tease you a little bit, have a bit of a joke with you. Are you interested in engaging with me on that level? If she's not, then it's like, okay, fine. Have a great day. See you later. If she is, then you can try and push things a little, you know, proceed with things a little bit further.
So you think direct game is actually a better. The reason I'm asking is because I have a section in book 5 that's coming up, and it's going. You just accurately explained what I would consider the real version of direct game, meaning it's not just, hey, bitch, you down to fuck? You know, that's not. It's not. It's not that kind of stuff. And I realize I'm not being fair with Alan, because that's not what Mode 1 is.
We got a lot. You remember last time we were on the show? When me and Tusk were on the show, we got a lot of blowback from Alan because of something we said. Which, to be fair, I mean, I like his book, so I don't know why that became an issue. But yeah, I mean, we're not as direct as that. You know, we're not going up and saying that, but we are expressing interest.
Right, and I think a lot of people don't really understand the difference between indirect and also. Now, would you agree with this, that there is sort of indirect, like body language, like indirect physicality, and there is direct physicality, and then there is indirect language, and then there is direct language, like words versus, like, you know, how you're presenting yourself. What we were just saying a minute ago, when it comes to demonstrating higher value, you can do that through a story, talking about yourself, insert, like I said, spiking the conversation with little bits of value in there. So there's the conversational side of it versus like the body language, how you're presenting yourself. The medium is the message, right? Would you say that there are direct ways to present yourself, like physically, like visually, versus, say, conversationally?
Well, physically, it's about how on you are, like, it's like you walk up, and if you're doing some touching, touching the arms, if you've got that sort of strong eye contact, if it's very suggestive, the way that you're looking, then yes, that is sort of a physical embodiment of a direct approach. I think when I'm talking about an indirect approach, what I'm really talking about is something where you start off in a much more friendly, sort of nondescript way, and then the idea is you build it up. And to be fair to indirect, I think it's actually Robert Greene, or somebody like Robert Greene, says somewhere that actually, when you look at, famous seducers over the centuries, actually indirect is the preferred method of most people, because the problem with direct is it puts the woman on the spot immediately. Like, it's not saying it in so many words, but it's almost like, look, here I am, I'm interested in you. Are you interested? And her default might be to say no. Whereas theoretically, if you do indirect, you can sort of build it up, and she gets to see your wonderful personality and, all the rest of it. But I think for myself, on the balance of just time efficiency, and, we live in a very fast-paced, dopamine hungry sort of age. And just on that basis, I think cutting to the chase quickly is just more efficient. You might potentially lose some along the way. Who maybe, if you'd have talked to her about Picasso for 20 minutes, she might have realized actually you were a great guy, and maybe she would have gone on a date with you. But to be honest, it's better to maybe lose a few and just create more opportunities than it is to, because otherwise you're going to be spending like 20 minutes talking to each of these individuals.
Do you think that a guy who's new to game should learn direct or indirect first? Like, should they use both? Like, in different situations, not obviously same situation, but yeah.
I think, no, you could definitely use, in saying all of that, you could definitely use both, and you could definitely use them in different situations. Like, if you're in a slightly more, like, if the classic example is on an airplane, you're on an airplane, you're on a 5-hour flight, it would just be nuts to go in direct to the girl who's sitting next to you on the flight, because it would just be really awkward if she says, "Oh, sorry, I'm not interested." You've got to sit next to her for 5 hours, and it's just not a good look, right? So in that sort of situation, or if you were at a party where you kind of maybe know the hosts, or I don't know, just any sort of situation, even if you're in a store or something like that where it's socially a little bit more high pressure, those kind of situations, it does make sense to go in with something indirect. But I would say, if a guy is a complete beginner, I would say there is something very freeing and sort of almost validating about just doing a bit of direct. Because the good thing about direct is, generally speaking, it's what you're actually thinking. When you see that girl, she's attractive, you could go up and just say that. You can go up and say, "Look, I just saw you. You're attractive. I wanted to come and say hello," which is absolutely 100% the truth. So you're not sort of trying to camouflage it or put on any sort of disguise. It's like literally what you're thinking and feeling in that moment.
Right.
And then you can dial it back a little bit and do some more indirect stuff. You know.
Yeah. See, when I was doing my research for that section of the book right there, and I actually had to for that one. By what I was able to learn from reading some of these old stuff is that a lot of the guys who were the early PUAs from the mystery method years were using indirect game throughout. Like that's all they did, and they got really good at indirect game. But they got to the point where they were doing the same openers, they were doing the same indirect approaches, they were doing the same routine over and over again, and so it worked. But the thing is that a lot of these guys go, do I have to keep doing this? So at some point, one of these guys, I don't know who it was, just said, maybe if I just say, hey, I'm into you. Well, are you into me?
Yeah.
I did that kind of stuff. And they found out that often enough it worked. And that was really what sort of separated, or what like made the difference between like an indirect approach versus a direct approach. And a lot of the guys were saying that you should learn indirect before you learn direct, because a lot of guys who don't have social savvy or they're incongruent, what happens, the reason I asked you about like physicality versus like what you're saying is a lot of guys are incongruent with what they're saying and how they're presenting themselves. So when they post up on a girl like, hey babe, I'm really interested in you, and that the physicality is like blocking her and turning their face towards her and everything else, it can be really intimidating or almost harassment at that point. Whereas they're not trying to do that. It's just that their body language is saying something different than what their mouth is saying at that time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we teach guys live, we will obviously help them to iron out those things, because just because you're expressing direct interest, it shouldn't be in any way. It should be a nice thing, it shouldn't be intimidating. It shouldn't be sort of anything kind of
non-threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. It shouldn't be that. And but I think it just depends on the circumstances, really. To be honest, I think there are some circumstances where indirect is great. I mean, the kind of indirect you're talking about was what we used to do back in the day. It was like these opinion openers, and it's like, oh, guys, can I just ask you a female opinion?
More, yeah.
Who
cheats more?
yeah, exactly. Or like, oh, my friends just found out that his that his girlfriend's cheating on him. Should he tell the friend? Stuff like that. And then the girls are going to go, oh, that's interesting. And then they start talking about it and blah, 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 which is great. It does get you into a conversation. It can work. The issue with that, though, is that at some point you're still going to have to transition it into, and now I'm hitting on you conversation. And that can be a little bit clunky sometimes. So that's the only thing you've got to bear in mind. Because it could be a bit weird. I mean, the worst kind of thing you can do is go up to the girl and just ask for directions. Like, hey, where's the Starbucks? And she's like, oh, it's down there left and on the third right. And then you're like, so do you like stuff? Then how do you handle that transition? Now, what you can do is you can call out the elephant in the room. You could at that point say, listen, I've got to just say, I don't actually want to go to Starbucks. I just saw you. You look very nice. I wanted to have a reason to come and speak to you because I'd kick myself otherwise. So you can do that, sort of call out the elephant in the room, or you've got to transition it into a conversation, which is possible, but it can sometimes just be a bit clunky. And then the woman thinks, well, hang on a minute, this guy obviously just came up to me. And the other thing is as well, they kind of know most of the time that you're hitting on them anyway.
Do you think that?
Yeah,
do you think that women today, like, I mean, you're in the game, you're out there you're running approaches and everything else. Now, I can only be an observer of this. I've been a keen observer of human behavior for a very long time. I happen to be in the liquor industry for a very long time.
Yeah.
And although I'm not going out there and I'm not being anybody's wingman or I'm not approaching, I see other dudes all the time doing, running good game or bad game on women at promos, at on-premise stuff all the time. So when I'm watching this happen, I'm just like, okay, is this guy, is he going to be successful just by what I can hear and what I can sort of eavesdrop on? Do you think that because I'm thinking in terms of like maybe as far back as like 4 or 5 years ago, but do you think that today that it is more refreshing for a woman to be approached like live in real life, like on, like at, a Yad stop? I don't know what else to call it, like is that like, day game stop? Is that like, do you think that's more appreciated now rather in an era where women are primarily on Tinder, primarily on Hinge or Bumble or whatever else, to have a guy go, hey, and express real interest in them right there on the street?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, I think it depends where you are in the world, because you would think that, and you would think that somewhere like London, because in London, obviously everybody's on Tinder, everyone's on the dating apps, and that is probably the predominant way people meet each other. But I have to say that, as I said, it's becoming a lot tougher here to do day game type approaches, and women seem to be a bit jaded by it, to be honest. They don't seem to be particularly, it seems to, and I don't believe that's because so many guys are doing it, because I still don't think actually there's, really it's a drop in the ocean. Not that many guys are doing it. Even if there were 20 people on Oxford Street, it's still nothing in the population size. But women just seem a bit, they don't seem to be particularly blown away by it or anything like that. But having said that, when you travel around a bit, when we were in, Russia, for example, or these places in Eastern Europe, there is still this kind of the women by and large seem to be very appreciative that you've come over and you've paid a compliment. They're like, oh, that's really nice. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Even very, very attractive women who, and it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to want anything to continue with you, but just on a very fundamental level, they're like, oh, that was really nice of you. And they'll have a conversation and they'll kind of allow the thing to proceed. So I think it kind of just depends where you are. I just think in the sort of hard bitten West, it's all becoming a bit, it's all difficult really, whether you do a direct approach or not. I mean, you still get sometimes, the woman will say, oh, that's really nice. People don't do this very much these days, but I don't know. It's just somehow in these big cities, I just feel like people are very hardened now, and they're just not really, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? There's just not that sort of like that innocence of the interactions that they used to be.
Right. People are, what do you want from me kind of thing.
Yeah.
What are you selling me? Right.
Yeah.
All right. We're at an hour 40, but I do want to ask you one last pointed question, because I just got a text here from Jeff Bezos. Did you know that we're business partners? I'm a business partner with Jeff Bezos. He and I would. We're simpatico. He says he wants to take the CAD Academy, and he wants to know what you would teach him so that he would be better at game. What would you teach Jeff Bezos if he really? I've got it right here. He really wants to go. What would you teach him in CAD Academy?
Well, there is actually Jeff Bezos tier for $1 billion, and he could join CAD Academy for $1 billion. But no, basically, it will be a complete mindset transformation. So it will strip away all of your preconceptions about yourself and how dating works and how you operate in the dating market. And it will help to build you back up into a stronger, more shiny, more sexy archetype of yourself. You self-actualize as your ideal guy. This is how I want to be perceived when I walk into the bar, when I walk into the nightclub, when I walk into the interaction. This is the kind of character that I want to be, the James Bond character, the rock star, the rapper, the whatever it is,
have a look. Yeah. Be something. Have a character. Yeah.
Exactly. It's giving you that archetype. It's giving you the confidence to embody that archetype. And it's giving you that edge that maybe you don't have now. And it really is that edge that makes all the difference. Because I've seen so many guys, well put together guys, intelligent, well spoken, got their money sorted, and they even know a bit about game, but they don't have that edge, and they end up crashing and burning, or just getting very flat responses from women. And you've got to bring something else to the party, I believe, in this day and age, particularly.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay, I'll tell him. Yeah, so Jeff says he's going to take the class. And
good
can
stuff.
You tell us how do we do this, and what do they get as a result of what can they expect from the class at the end of your workshop? Let's just say.
Well, they can expect to come out the other side much more confident, to have a much clearer sense of their own identity, to be much stronger in terms of charisma, in terms of their charisma for dating, in terms of their dating skills, and also in terms of their game knowledge as well. Because all of the latest stuff that I've learned about dating and attraction, I've whacked into this course. So there's 3 tiers to this, basically. There's the digital course only, which is 10 hours worth of really in-depth video content, where we go through the sexual marketplace. We go through dark triad as well. So how to bring that bad boy vibe into your interactions, into your personality, radical differentiation, how to stand out, plus game techniques. So all of the game techniques that you need. So you've got just the digital course. But then on top of that, if you go to tier 2, and that's, by the way, £197, just the digital course. Okay. £497, You also get access to 10 live Zoom webinars that I will be teaching. Okay, so I would advise guys to go for that, because you want to get on board with those webinars, because as you know, it's in those live classes where the magic really happens. And we'll be bringing different people in to help teach. And yeah, we're going to go really deep into those concepts. You can obviously ask me questions, ask the other guys questions live and direct. And then there's a third tier for 1,091, where basically you get all of that, but you also get 2 months of WhatsApp coaching with me as well afterwards, plus phone calls, etc., etc. So you've got 3 tiers there to have a look at. And there's the $1 billion tier for Jeff as well.
$1 billion tier. It's funny because the rationale, did you just put Jeff Bezos on? Yes, I did, because he's actually using my link that's in the description right here to go sign up for Cat Academy. Once again, yes, I am an affiliate with my good friends. Everyone in Rule Zero is an affiliate. So if you are interested in Cat Academy, if you would like to get a more in-depth understanding of what game is, how game works, how you can apply it, how you can learn to what applied intersexual dynamics. That's the crux of the whole thing. So if you guys are interested in that, when is registration closing? Are we keeping it open a little longer, or what's the
it's going to close at the weekend. It's going to close on Sunday the 14th. We'll keep it open until Sunday the 14th. So you've got a few days left to take action. So jump on board. But particularly that top tier, well, the Bezos tier is gone already. And then the other tier,
just confirmed, yes.
yeah. And I probably won't be on Rule Zero this weekend.
Yeah. I'm done, guys. Somehow.
Yeah. And the tier below that, though, is only open for 10 guys. So those will sell out. So, obviously you need to take action on that sooner rather than later.
Excellent. Okay, good. So if you are interested in Cat Academy, the link is in the description. It's the first one that's in the description of this video. Check it out. Let me know what you think. I'm going to audit the class this time too. So I would like to be I try to audit as much of these as I possibly can. So if it's like John doing body language mastery or whatever, I'm always going to be there. If nothing else, I'll probably be lurking. So so there we go. Also, I will not be on Rule Zero on Saturday, as I will be in Tulsa, Oklahoma for Pat Campbell's memorial service. So I am going to be there until the following Monday. I'm flying out Friday. I'll be there till the following Monday. So Sunday's show, I will probably do live from my hotel room if I do one at all. If I do, it'll be a very short impromptu kind of thing, just to sort of let you guys know what was going on and what my thoughts were on the memorial, and sort of give you an idea of what's going on with Pat. And I might just do a Q&A too. So I will be doing that, not in this studio, but somewhere in the Marriott in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So if you are in that area, or if you want to go, if you go to Pat Campbell's Twitter profile, and you will see the Eventbrite link there. If you want to show up, I believe it is at 3 o'clock Central Standard Time. And it will, I believe the service is being given by Dr. Everett Piper as well, who is a good friend of both of ours. So I will be there on that Saturday, and then in Tulsa for the following day as well. So I'm going to be a busy guy for a while. I got some other really interesting things coming up. It's a possibility I might be in Miami with Fresh and Fit by the beginning of December as well. And I don't know if I should reveal who the special guests I'm going to be on with, but it's people that you already know, and it should make for a very lively. Certainly Sterling Cooper will be there. Oh yeah, that's a gimme. But so that's going to be me. I've got a very heavy travel schedule coming up over the next 6 or 7 weeks. So I will also be at George Gammon's Rebel Capitalist Conference in January. That'll be in Houston, Texas. That's the first weekend of January. I will be there, and then I've got to make a trip to Texas for another show that I'm not going to say anything about until I'm 100% confirmed and we're all ready to go. But I'm already making travel plans, so that's gonna be a really interesting one too. So I hate to tease you guys at the end here, but that's something very interesting is coming up. I'm someone you would not expect me to be on their show. So all right, that's it. Troy, thanks for dropping by. If you want to get in touch with Troy, you can always find him on Twitter. You can find him. You're on Instagram too. Yeah, I follow.
Yeah, I've got Instagram. Yeah, Real Troy Francis.
Cool. All right, man. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.